It is the 4th of the 6th, 2025. The time is 5 minutes past 10. 2 or 3 topics on the docket this morning. We've got to talk about Lewis and Charles Leclerc's reaction to his race pace or lack thereof. In the second instance, we've got to talk about Maximilian Verstappen because there's an article published on Autosport that's been none too kind. F1 has a Max Verstappen sized problem on its hand, says Autosport. And so too, we'll talk about Pedro de la Rosa and some of his comments about Lewis. And we'll talk about F1 as a sport and its sponsorship power in the first instance. We may as well talk about Maximilian Verstappen and get it out of the way. This article has been damning. Read the headline. F1 has a Verstappen problem and keeps ignoring it. Fabien Galliard writes, having left Max Verstappen's racing moves unpunished or leniently sanctioned over and over again, the FIA and F1 have just reinforced the above law's status. Oh, the humanity. Of what are you speaking, Fabien? Well, of course, it's a reference to what happened at the Barcelona, the Spanish Grand Prix, even the incident between George and Max. And at this juncture, it feels like every man, woman, child and dog has roundly come out and spoken negatively, disparagingly about Max Verstappen's incident. Rosberg, you've heard. Damon Hill, you've heard. Now the boys and girls over at the race. Everyone, even Max Verstappen to a certain extent on Instagram, has come out and done a mea culpa that something happened that shouldn't have. I would argue that why is the more interesting plot line, but I digress. This isn't about me. Autosport Fabien Galliard writes, for years, the F1 paddock has been praising Max Verstappen, and rightfully so. Everyone is aware of his glorious achievements and his remarkable record. The Red Bull driver keeps amazing crowds with his talent, utterly dominating seats. He's been quite clever as Fabio. He's given his props in the first instance. He has disarmed those who want to leverage at Maximilian Verstappen criticism. He's disarmed them of the weapon that is bias by giving him his props in the first instant. Utterly dominating seasons, this article continues, grabbing pole positions when his car shouldn't be in contention, winning races as a dark horse. Verstappen's racecraft is exceptional. Just look at the way he snatched the lead from Oscar Piastri at the start of the Imola Grand Prix. Few drivers are actually able to achieve such a masterful move. It was audacious, confident, precise, clever, exactly the skills the Dutchman can use to get what he wants. However, it's about to get techier than techier things as far as this Autosport article. Fabien continues, the thing is, there's a dark side to Verstappen. He doesn't even really conceal it, but many in the media, his team and his fan base pretend not to be aware of it or just to ignore it. The dark side emerged yet again on Sunday under intense pressure after his team had asked him, blah, 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 we know that already. Verstappen, a similar penalty to those given good faith, accidentally caused collision. Okay, fair. So he got a penalty, not dissimilar to those that people... Bloody Nora, I can't even... This is chaos. Chaos. Go on, let's read it and I'll react to it. The single occurrence of such a foul move is already a problem, but could be forgiven. After all, Sebastian Vettel did cross a line when he intentionally collided with Lewis Hamilton. Okay, true. Verstappen brake test. Oh my God, he's going in. Verstappen brake tested Hamilton in a tense Saudi Arabia in 2020. The levels of blasphemy here is too much. The governing bodies have undeniably failed to address how frequent and intentional Verstappen's behaviour is, and they won't even connect the dots to call a spade, to call a deliberate move a deliberate move. Whether they're ignoring it on purpose or through thoughtlessness, nobody knows. Oh, the humanity. Look. Let me say this, enough of the blaspheming because it's too much for me. It's far too early in the morning. I'm far too emotionally fragile and frail. Go on. I get the picture. I understand to a greater or lesser extent what the dude's barking at. But ultimately, Autosport can't write F1 articles if there is no financial resource. This isn't me excusing necessarily FIA and the stewards and the race director. Of course, you've got to give You've got to institute for the rules in a way which is fair and consistent across related parties. I get it. I've argued for that for the longest time. That notwithstanding, Martin Brundle's told you a gazillion times, we don't have a job, we don't have a sport if there is no money in it. And so therefore, the 4-time, soon to be 5-time champion and 7-time champion in Maximilian Verstappen and Sir Lewis Hamilton, to a greater or lesser extent, were always going to get protected, aren't they? This is the world in which we live, and there is such a thing as financial resources and money, therefore. Oh, and by the way, as if we've not talked about Maximilian Verstappen enough, Joanna, Jomo, you're a legend, Eddie. Let's talk about sports, business of sport. Vincenzo Landino says that F1 teams generated $2.05 billion in sponsor revenue in 2024. That's more than NBA, MLB, NHL, MLS, nearly as much as the NFL, which was $2.4 billion and over 8 times more per team than any US league. F1 team average was $6.2 million versus an NFL average of $745,000. They are sitting on a gold mine. The second point only double underlines the first, does it not? You need yourself a Max, you need yourself a Sir Lewis, you need yourself a Charles Leclerc. Once these guys go away, there are going to be so many attention dollars that will be spent elsewhere, no longer on the sport, the weird and wacky world that is the one that F's. Oh, and by the way, Lewis Hamilton chaos. Eddie, buckle up, Paisley. It is a bit chaotic over here. Pedro de la Rosa in the first instance. Let me set the table properly. Lewis Hamilton came into F1 on a storm. It was a marketing behemoth. Lest we forget, Lewis Hamilton is a business. He's not a businessman. He's a business, man. You understand the difference. That Lewis is an entity, the likes of which we've never seen, nor will we ever see again in F1. Instagram post, unprecedented engagement settings. Now, however, it's the time to show and prove. And to see, forget what I say as a Sir Lewis Hamilton fan who wants to see him back at his best at the ripe old age of foot. Forget me, ignore me. I don't matter in this conversation. Picture being John Elkann. Picture being a C-suite exec level bod at the red car with a yellow badge and black prancing horse atop. They will be looking to see some delivery, a return on their not insubstantial investment set, some say, to be $99 million per year at the altar of Sir Lewis Hamilton, Phil. Now, on the back of the Spanish Grand Prix, Pedro de la Rosa, mate of Fernando Alonso, has criticised Lewis's performance in that car, and in particular the way that he handled Nico Hülkenberg, getting overtaken by that dude in the dying embers of a 66-lap Grand Prix. De La Rosa said, you can't judge a driver in Nico Hülkenberg by the car that he's in. That Lewis just trusted it. He saw it was a Sauber behind him and he was looking much further ahead instead of behind him. He thought, it doesn't matter. Pedro de la Rosa's words, not mine. Listen, we spoke to James Allen the other day and he said of the very best drivers that when they have a sniff of a 25-pointer, a cheeky race victory, then you gain something from them. That's when they become fire-breathing dragons. And I would argue that that's absolutely right with Lewis, but the inverse is also true. When Lewis is competing for 5th or 6th or 7th in the carbon fibre zone, I mean, he doesn't wake up for anything less than 25 points. And maybe that is a criticism, particularly if we're talking about the Charles Leclerc, Sir Lewis Hamilton dynamic, as we will be in the final instance this morning. Here's what's happened. So again, you'll recall Charles Leclerc in qualified said, you know what, I will sacrifice my qualifying with a view to attain, optimise for race pace. Planet F1 writes the following. As early as lap 7, Leclerc was pushing Ferrari to make a decision, telling his engineer that we are wasting time behind Lewis. Brian Bozza responded, copy. Leclerc responded, hoping to go to plan A. Bozza responded, switch position to yellow. PlanetF1.com continues that 2 laps later on lap 9, Leclerc reminded Ferrari via his race engineer Brian Bozzi that he sacrificed his qualifying result on Saturday in order to have more strategic flexibility and so race pace for the race. How did he do that? Why did he do that? Well, Leclerc apparently carried out just a single run in Q3 in order to preserve another set of soft compound tyres, resulting in him being outqualified ultimately by his teammate Sir Lewis Carl Davidson Hamilton for only the second time this season. To that, the Monegasque, modern day Jean Alesi, wasn't too pleased. And I can understand, because again, in his own mind, like any F1 peddler ever, he's the fastest on the grid. Shouldn't be getting outpaced in qualifying by his teammate. Therefore, Charles was looking to see an equal and opposite upside as far as his performance in the race, in race pace, not be hindered, therefore, from the dirty air of anyone, not least his teammate. Charles Leclerc during the race said this when he was caught up behind his teammate Sir Lewis. Guys, I'm sacrificing, and this is where it gets techier than techie things. Umaj, properly techie. Leclerc said during the race, guys, I'm sacrificing my quality to be fast in the race. It's not to then slow us down in the race. So yeah, you choose how much faster I can go. If I have clean air, I can only tell you once I am in that free air and not behind the other red car with the yellow badge and black prancing horse atop. I'm stuck in Lewis's gearbox. That's Charles Leclerc's words, not mine. On lap 10 continues this Planet F1 article. The call is made for Lewis Hamilton to swap positions by his race engineer Riccardo Adami. Adami says we are swapping the cars. Hamilton is then seen easing off and made it happen. Leclerc was let through and challenged into turn 1, to which Lewis Hamilton responded. You can see him after the race. He said there are 0 takeaways, positive ones, out of this triple header. European settings. The car is rubbish. I lack stability at the rear, at the altar of rigidity. There is none of that in that suspension, in that Ferrari car. Yellow badge, black prancing horse atop. Lewis Hamilton's pace is gonzo. As near as makes no difference, every single race, he's 50-40 seconds behind his teammate. And this is different for Sir Lewis. I understand why he's reacting in interviews like his, because he ain't used to losing. Lest we forget who we're talking about here, thou shalt put some respect on Sir Lewis Hamilton's name. One of the best that we've ever seen. One of the quickest in absolute terms pace that we've ever seen. 7-time champion, damn near unprecedented settings. Mount Rushmore of F1, first round Hall of Fame as far as Sir Lewis Hamilton. So this then is a paradigm shift. I understand that King George Russell was roundly beating him in qualifying for the past 24 months, as near as makes no difference. But this feels and looks and smells just a little bit different to that. It feels like Lewis Hamilton is having himself humbled. He's been exposed to his own mortality in real time before the world's press and media. Everybody is paying attention to this story. How Charles Leclerc, how the extent to which even Charles Leclerc is beating the 7-time champion in Sir Lewis Carl Davidson Hamilton. And not only that, the interaction between the two, because this is playing out before the world's press and media, in front of our eyes. The revolution will not be televised. Well, at least it shouldn't be, but it is being chat, and that's where the chaos is coming from, and that's why you see Sir Lewis reacting. What's the solve? Well, Sir Lewis needs to put on his big boy shorts, right? He needs to perform. He needs to fulfill a not insubstantial promise of the halo in front of the Ferrari F40. This needs to be Michael Schumacher. Do you know what I mean? He needs to build a team around him. Bring over Bono once the non-compete clause ceases and nulls and voids. Build a team up around yourself like Michael did. Surely that's the only play for Sir Lewis. Or defend or vacate. If the performance isn't there, nor the desire. People say that when you get to 40 years old, the first thing to go is a 10th or 2 in absolute terms pace. And if you are up on the other side of the garage from one Charles Leclerc, who is a fire-breathing dragon, some say point to point the quickest on the grid, then that's only going to work out one way, isn't it? It's techier than techie things. Sad times for Sir Lewis. Umar says, absolutely, sir. It was uncalled for, but I hate these arguments. They are role models. What are the kids going to do? I know, it's a bit chaotic. I tell you what, though, Umar, I will link this Autosport article in the description been very clever, this Fabian chap, in giving Maximilian Verstappen all the praise up front and then laying on the criticism thick, just to allay any accusation, let's say, around bias against Maximilian Verstappen. It's techier than techie things in the weird and wacky world. There is the one that F's. But I digress.